Becoming a mother is a very joyous feeling for women, but it also brings along many responsibilities. Due to this, a mother works tirelessly day and night for her child, which makes her life hectic and challenging, showing how a mother's mind undergoes psychological changes while taking care of her child, and how those changes can become extremely dangerous for her. We see a lady who has come to a grocery store with her child. While moving ahead, she meets her friend Sally, who meets her son, who is still very young. Sally asks her how her life has been after having a child. Mother tells her that she stays at home with her child all day, but feels like she is stuck and cannot find her way out. It's not that she doesn't love her child. She loves him very much, but she is unable to take time out for herself. This mother was once an artist and used to work in a gallery, but after having her child, she focused entirely on him, which led her to quit her job. Afterwards, she takes her child home, prepares breakfast for him, and then takes him to the playground, spending her entire day with him. Her husband used to visit only occasionally, so the mother lived alone with her child and followed the same routine every day. This made her extremely bored as there was no novelty left in her life. Every day she would take her child to a baby book shop, which was like a daycare where children were taught. There she met other mothers who also brought their children. After class, they would talk, and the mother would share what she used to do before having a child. She realized that all the mothers were in the same situation. They had dedicated themselves entirely to their children and had forgotten their own dreams. Later, she would take her son home, read him a story, and try to put him to sleep. But her son was very stubborn and refused to sleep. The mother became very frustrated, and just as she dozed off for a while, her son started crying, waking her up. She hugged him and wished he would sleep so she could get some rest, but he still didn't. Suddenly, her son said, "I love you," and she hugged him tightly, showing the strong bond between a mother and her child. The next morning, she gave her son a piggyback ride. While doing so, her son noticed hair on her back and commented that she had hair growing there. Surprised, the mother immediately went to the bathroom and saw white hair growing on her lower back. This made her realize she didn't even have time to trim her hair. In the afternoon, her husband returned from work. She was happy to see him and told him about the strange feelings she was experiencing and the odd hair growing on her body. However, her husband didn't take her concerns seriously, which made her realize he wouldn't understand. So she decided not to share anything further. That night, after their son fell asleep, she told her husband that she wanted to take up a part-time job to have some time for herself and feel better. Her husband responded by saying their child was growing up, and once he was old enough, they would enroll him in kindergarten. Until then, she should wait before considering a job. He also mentioned how many women don't get to spend time with their children, and that she should feel fortunate to be with her son all day. He added that he always thought about them and rushed home from work to be with them. Hearing this, the mother replied that taking care of their child was not easy. The next morning, the three of them went to the playground together, where she plays with her child, and when they return home, the mother tries to take a nap. Her husband tells her not to worry as he will bathe the child. However, while bathing the child, he keeps calling her multiple times, once for a towel and another time for the child's duck toy, frustrating the mother. She yells at him, saying he promised to handle it, but is bothering her instead. At night, while the three are sleeping, the child wakes up suddenly and starts crying. The next morning, when her husband wakes up, he asks her to make him coffee, to which she tells him to make it himself. He also says that last night she woke him up like a night bitch. The mother smiles and responds, "I am a night bitch." Her husband then gets ready for work, and before leaving, he tells her not to stress, saying that everything will be fine soon, and happiness is a choice, so she should learn to be happy. Hearing this, the mother silently wishes he would stop talking nonsense. Later, she takes her child to the playground, where she reads an article about dogs and learns that humans can develop senses like dogs. Just then, a few dogs approach her, and seeing them makes her happy. She chases after them with her child. The encounter reminds her of her mother, who was a single mom. She recalls how her mother used to take care of her, but often felt overwhelmed. Back at home, she tries to paint with her child, but her mischievous son starts painting on the walls. Although she loves her child dearly and finds his behavior cute, she can't bring herself to scold him. Exhausted, she falls asleep on the paint. That night, while going to the bathroom, she notices something strange, a tail growing from her back. This shocks her greatly. The changes she was experiencing were psychological, as she had begun to believe she was a night bitch, living a life like a dog with no goals other than raising children and taking care of them. The next day, at the grocery store, she notices her sense of smell has become incredibly sharp, allowing her to detect scents from a distance. That night, while sleeping, she hears noises outside her house. When she goes to check, she sees a group of dogs. She starts playing with them. The following morning, she prepares breakfast for her child. Her son notices a dead mouse near the gate and picks it up. When the mother checks, she sees not just one, but several dead animals. She realizes the dogs must have done this. Later, when she visits the bookstore, she speaks with the librarian, She asks the librarian to give her a book where humans turn into dogs. The librarian gives her the book, and as she reads it, she becomes fascinated and starts imagining herself transforming completely into a dog. The next day, in the cafeteria, she takes a lot of food and starts eating like a dog. Her child mimics her behavior, and the people around them feel awkward. Just then, the librarian arrives and tells her that when her child was little, she used to play dog-dog games with her child too. That night, while bathing, her husband comes in and says they're out of milk for the baby. She tells him to go to the supermarket and buy some, adding that she's tired of being disturbed even while bathing. Her husband leaves to buy the milk. Later, she reads a book on Hindu mythology and learns about Sarama, a divine female dog mentioned in the Rig Veda. Sarama is referred to as the mother of all creatures. This revelation makes her feel even more connected to the idea that she is like a dog. The next morning, she visits an art gallery with her husband, where she meets a friend who asks if she still plays dog-dog with her child. When her husband hears this, he asks what it's about. She explains that playing this game has helped her child sleep better and enjoy playtime. At the gallery, the mother breaks down and tells her husband that the artist within her feels dead. She is so consumed by motherhood that she can't find time for her art anymore. Talking about her feelings brings her relief, and her husband assures her of his support. That night, while feeling hungry, she suddenly starts acting like a dog. She goes outside, digs a hole like a dog, and imagines herself completely transformed. She roams the streets freely. Later, she returns home covered in dirt, and her husband notices this while she is bathing. The scenes of her acting like a dog are psychological, showing how she perceives herself. She imagines that being a dog makes her feel free, as she can run freely on the streets. The next day, her husband goes back to work, and she resumes her daily routines with her child. One day at the bookstore, she meets all the mothers and sees a pregnant woman. The women who were soon to be mothers congratulate her. The next morning, when she is with her husband, he asks why she is teaching their child dog-like behavior. She explains that it's just a game. Later that night, she goes out for dinner with her school friends. While there, she starts behaving strangely, barking like a dog and running away. She begins to feel like she is turning into a dog again. When she steps outside her house at night, she meets several dogs. Her pet cat also comes out, and she strangles it to death. The next morning, her child finds the cat dead and starts crying. She is shocked and realizes her mental state isn't stable. Afterwards, she buries the cat in their garden. That night, when her husband returns from work, she tells him she has an idea. She can't live this life anymore. She proposes they separate so he can also take responsibility for their child, allowing her to focus on her art. Her husband agrees, and they start co-parenting. The child spends some days with the mother and others with the father. With less burden on her, the mother finds time to spend with friends and resumes painting. She begins creating portraits of her friends. Meanwhile, her husband struggles to manage the child on his own. Gradually, her life becomes easier. One day, she organizes an exhibition of her paintings in a gallery. Guests admire her artwork and praise her. After everyone leaves, her husband helps clean up and apologizes for not understanding her earlier. He admits how hard it is to take care of a child and how much he now appreciates her efforts. He also confesses his love for her and acknowledges the importance of giving her space. The mother feels happy that he understands her struggles. She hugs him and they reconcile. The family starts living together again. A few months later, she becomes pregnant with another child, and the movie ends here.